All right, let's dive into some tech drama today, courtesy of the Beautiful Chaos podcast.
Sounds fun.
They've been covering this new DeepSeek R1 model.
Oh, yeah, it's causing quite a stir.
It really seems to be shaking things up. It's got everyone talking in the global tech world, and there are some geopolitical rumblings too.
Definitely.
So we're going to do a deep dive today.
I love a deep dive.
We'll try to figure out just what DeepSeek's R1 is, how it works, and why it's got everyone a little freaked out.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
So first things first, what exactly is DeepSeek's R1?
Well, I know you're probably picturing like a
Was it a
Terminator.
robot?
Not quite. No robots here.
Okay, good.
It is an open source large language model. We call those LLMs for short.
Okay.
So it's basically a superpowered brain that can process and generate text, translate languages, write different kinds of creative content, and, answer your questions in an informative way.
Sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah, and what's really causing a stir is that it seems to be on par with, or even better than, other leading models like OpenAI's GPT-4.
Really?
But here's the kicker. It's significantly cheaper to run.
So it's like a brainier and more budget-friendly version of the AI we've been hearing so much about.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
I'm sold.
It is pretty impressive.
How is that even possible? Are they cutting corners somewhere?
I wouldn't say cutting corners, but they are doing things quite differently. DeepSeek is a Chinese AI startup.
Okay.
It was founded by this hedge fund guy, real whiz kid.
All right.
And they've really kind of shaken up the whole scene with their approach to building and training R1. Instead of relying only on the usual massive data sets for training, they're really focusing on reinforcement learning.
So, like, they're teaching it.
Kind of, yeah.
Interesting. What is that, reinforcement learning? I feel like I've heard that before, but...
It's a bit like training a dog, You give it a treat when it does something right. Over time, it learns to repeat those actions, get more treats.
To get that reward. Yeah.
Exactly. So with R1, the model learns by actually doing tasks and getting feedback from the system. It does well. It gets an algorithmic good boy,
Yeah.
And if it makes mistakes, it adjusts and tries something else.
So instead of just like reading and memorizing, it's actually learning by doing.
Right, like an AI apprentice, you could say.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do remember, though, in some of the stuff we read, wasn't there something about the early version having some readability problems?
Yeah, the first version, R10, it was all reinforcement learning. Brilliant at problem solving, but yeah, the text it produced, not so clear.
Yeah.
It was tough to understand. So in the final R1, they added a little bit of that traditional supervised training,
Oh, they kind of smoothed it out a little.
Right. They refined the output without messing up all those reasoning abilities that developed through all that reinforcement learning.
That's clever. But there's got to be more to this efficiency story, right? Like, what else are they doing to make it so efficient?
Well, there are a couple of other cool things they're doing. One is this framework they're using called mixture of experts. It's like having, imagine a team of experts, each with their own specialty.
Okay.
So instead of using all the model's parameters for every single task, which would be super resource intensive, they just activate the little part that's relevant to the task at hand.
Oh, so they're just kind of using the brain power that's needed. They're not overdoing it.
Exactly. It streamlines the whole process, makes it way more efficient.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then another thing is they're using this distillation process where they basically create smaller distilled versions of R1
Okay.
that still have a lot of the original capabilities, but in a much more compact form.
So like a condensed version.
Yeah. And this means you can run R1 on a wider range of devices, even things like your phone.
Wow. So not only is it powerful and efficient, it's portable too.
That's the idea.
That's incredible. That could really open up access to advanced AI for so many more people.
It could, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a decent grasp on what R1 is and how it works. But now let's get to the juicy stuff, the geopolitical ramifications.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Because this whole thing is being talked about as a major power shift in the tech world, right?
Absolutely. This is where things get really interesting, especially when you start connecting the technical details to the bigger geopolitical picture.
Okay, I like where this is going.
For instance, remember how DeepSeek managed to train R1 so efficiently, even with those limitations on getting the most advanced computer chips?
Right, the whole U.S. sanctions thing, that's a big deal for any tech company.
Huge. But they found a way around it. They stockpiled a ton of those high-end NVIDIA GPUs before the sanctions hit.
So smart.
Right. And then they focused on optimizing their software and algorithms to squeeze every bit of performance out of what they had.
So they took a potential roadblock and turned it into a chance to innovate.
Exactly.
Which is honestly pretty impressive.
Very much so. And it points to this broader strategic shift we're seeing, especially in China.
Oh, what's that?
Some experts call it asymmetric innovation. It's about finding ways to compete, even excel, despite having limitations.
So like they're playing a different game.
Yeah, one where being resourceful and efficient is the key to winning.
I like it.
And speaking of playing a different game, don't forget about DeepSeek's choice to make R1 open source.
Yeah, that's a pretty bold move. What's the thinking there?
It's huge. They're fostering global collaboration, basically inviting the whole world to join in. It's the opposite of what companies like OpenAI are doing with their closed-off proprietary approach.
Yeah, it's a completely different philosophy.
Right. It's like they're saying, hey, we might not have all the resources you have, but we can still create something amazing, and we're going to share it with everyone.
I love that.
It's pretty powerful.
It's a big statement. All right, so we've got the technical side, we've got the open source angle. Now, how does all this tie into the global power dynamics? What are the geopolitical implications here?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. It really does have the potential to change things up. Imagine, like, countries that haven't been a part of the AI revolution, suddenly they have access to this incredible tech.
It's almost like a technological equalizer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Giving those who have been left behind a chance to catch up, maybe even surpass.
Yeah.
And R1's accessibility, that's especially huge for the global south,
Yeah.
where resources, infrastructure, they've limited access to this kind of cutting-edge AI. This could be a game changer for them.
Yeah, it's like this new wave of innovators and entrepreneurs could emerge from places we've never seen before.
Totally. And it's not just about individual countries. Think about the partnerships, alliances shifting in the tech world, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It feels like the whole landscape is changing.
We're seeing these new collaborations pop up, like Russia aligning with China on AI projects. It's a direct challenge to that U.S. dominance that's been around for so long.
So it's like the old guard is being disrupted and this new, more decentralized system is emerging.
Exactly. It's fascinating to watch.
But let's be real. Not everyone's thrilled about this power shift, right?
Uh-huh.
There's some anxiety around DeepSeek and R1. What are people worried about?
True. Some are saying this open source approach could backfire. What if it gets misused?
Like for bad stuff.
Yeah, like disinformation campaigns, even developing autonomous weapons, that kind of thing.
That's scary.
It's a valid concern. I mean, any powerful tech can be used for good or bad. AI is no different.
There's also that question of, can DeepSeek really compete long-term with the big guys?
That's the big question, right? They're still at a disadvantage, like in terms of raw computing power.
Right, the resources.
Yeah, they've been super resourceful, but companies like OpenAI, they have way more resources. It's kind of a David and Goliath situation.
I love that analogy.
DeepSeek's the underdog with the clever slingshot, but Goliath's still got a lot of muscle.
And let's not forget about censorship.
Ah, the elephant in the room.
R1 has to play by the Chinese government's rules, meaning it can't be used to create content that criticizes the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
That's a big deal,
Right.
especially for those who, value free speech.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue. Some say censorship's the necessary evil, keeps things stable, under control.
Yeah.
Others, they see it as a violation of basic rights.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It raises some important questions about government's role in regulating AI and how it impacts, like, free speech in the digital age.
It's a tough issue. No easy answers
Yeah.
there. It's just one of the many hurdles DeepSeek will have to face as they try to become a major player in the global AI scene.
So yeah, R1, it's groundbreaking, a real sign of things changing, but it's not a guaranteed win for DeepSeek. They've got a lot to prove, lots of obstacles ahead.
They've definitely shaken things up, but the game is still on.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
Absolutely. It's like we're watching this tech revolution happen in real time.
Yep.
With all the, the ups and downs, the uncertainties, and the potential for progress and disruption.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's a reminder that the future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's a story that's still being written. We're all part of shaping how it unfolds.
So true. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into DeepSeek's R1, what are the main takeaways for our listeners? What should they be keeping an eye on as this all continues to play out?
Well, I think the big thing here is that we're in a new era of AI.
A new era.
Where the playing field's leveling out.
Mm-hmm.
And the power is shifting in some pretty surprising ways.
Anytime.
And DeepSeek's R1, it's a prime example of that. It's this powerful symbol of innovation coming from outside the usual tech hubs.
Yeah.
And it shows that the future of AI, it's going to be more diverse, more multipolar than a lot of people thought.
Absolutely. But another key takeaway is that with all this excitement about AI, we have to remember there are some big challenges and risks that come with it. Misuse, ethical implications, those are real concerns, things we need to address as a society.
Yeah, we got to be careful. We can't just jump all in without thinking about, the potential downsides.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
We need to be asking the tough questions, right? Like, how is this technology being developed? How is it
Yeah.
going to be used? And who's going to be controlling it?
Exactly. And we need to talk about the values that we want to build into these systems.
It's not just about the tech. It's about shaping the future in a way that benefits everyone.
Right. And that means really thinking about bias, transparency, accountability.
Yeah,
And we also have to think about the impacts on jobs, privacy, even democracy. These
yeah,
are big issues, but we can't just ignore them.
absolutely not. So to wrap it all up, DeepSeek's R1, I mean, it's really shaken things up. It's a sign that the future of AI, it's going to be way more dynamic, way more unpredictable than anyone imagined.
Totally agree.
And it's a bit of a wake-up call for everyone. Policymakers, industry leaders, everyday people, we all need to be having this conversation about the role we want AI to play in our world.
That's the point, right? It's
Yeah.
not a done deal. This story is still being written. The choices we make today are going to determine the kind of future we have. So let's make sure those choices, they're informed, thoughtful, and they reflect our values.
This has been such a fascinating look into the world of AI and geopolitics.
It has.
And I hope everyone listening is as, well, energized and maybe a little terrified about the possibilities as I am.
Uh-huh. It's an exciting time.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
It's been a pleasure being here. And remember, the future of AI is in our hands. Let's make it a future we can be proud of.